Hey everyone, Certified High Performance Coach Michelle Weimer here with you today. I want to thank you for joining me. And today we are continuing our conversation and our look at the book The Four Agreements by Miguel Ruiz. And we're talking about agreement number 2 today. And the concept today is don't take anything personally. So think about that for a second. How often do you take things personally when someone is being rude or disrespectful or judgmental, just kind of downright mean? Like, do you take it personally? Do you see it as a personal attack on yourself and you're the victim of that? Or do you observe that person and recognize that their behavior and their actions and their beliefs and their thoughts, that's all about them and who they are and their experiences that they've had in their life? So I'm going to read a quote from you to you from the book, and then we'll talk a little bit more about this. So Don Miguel Ruiz says, "Nothing others do is because of you. What others say and do is a projection of their own reality, their own dreams. When you are immune to the opinions and actions of others, you won't be the victim of needless suffering." So think about that for a second. Again, and ask yourself, how often have you taken what somebody else, their behaviors or their actions, their beliefs or their opinions, the things that they say, especially, if they're being rude or disrespectful or hurtful, when you take that personally, how does that affect you? Or, if you don't, if you can pull back and recognize that this person is acting this way because of them, like they need to take ownership of that. You don't need to take ownership of it. Now, again, that's not to say that if you are behaving badly, that you don't take ownership of that. That's the whole thing. You don't take personal what somebody else is doing. You take personal what you're doing. Take a look at your own actions and behaviors, your own words and things that you're speaking. You take ownership of that instead of taking ownership of what someone else is doing and how they're behaving. And when you can stop taking how somebody else is behaving personally, you no longer allow that person's behavior to have an effect on you. You no longer have to be the victim of somebody else's negative behavior because you don't have to own it. You don't have to take it personally. So how do you do that, right? And first, before we go into how to do that, let me just say this. I am not in any way, shape, or form saying it's okay to be treated badly. Please hear me there. You don't have to be the victim of someone else's behavior. That's the whole point here, right? You don't have to let somebody else treat you badly, but sometimes it's not about really moving into the space of taking some kind of action there. It's about recognizing and understanding that the way people are acting and behaving isn't about you. And I think maybe right now is a great time, at least in the US for sure, where the election's coming up, and I've seen so many negative, hateful, hurtful things written on social media. And I want you to hear this and understand, like, when people are being rude, being disrespectful, that's their stuff to own. You don't have to take it personally because they need to take ownership of their own behavior. And it doesn't make it okay by any means for you to put up with that, but it means that you step back and you recognize how that person's behaving and acting. That's not about you. That's about them, and that's theirs to own. So how do you not take things personally when somebody's behaving badly? So first of all, you have to start with always remembering that people are fighting their own battles. People show up in their life based on their own reality, their own experiences, and from their own perspective. So their reality is what they've created for themselves based on what's happened to them in their lives, just like it has for you. And we'll get to that in a minute. So first of all, as I said, number one, start by always remembering that people are fighting their own battles. People are experiencing life from their own reality. It's their own perspective. And the more often than not, their behavior and their harsh words really have nothing to do with you. It's about them. The second thing you need to do is see the bigger picture. Okay, so what's really going on with this other person? And I'll give you an example. I had a reader write in and say that she was really struggling with a coworker who was being very rude and kind of like putting her down a lot, being disrespectful of her. And so we worked through, I actually got her on the phone, we worked through what was happening and how she could process through that. And through the course of her, number one, no longer accepting his behavior as taking it personally for herself and recognizing that he was going through some things. She actually had a conversation with him and found out he was dealing with a divorce. He was feeling very hurt himself. And what do people do when they feel hurt? Often they lash out, right? They act back. And even though it had nothing to do with her, it wasn't her that had hurt him, it was his spouse. But in him not being able to feel like he could act out towards that person, he was acting out towards everyone else. And when she was able to recognize it really wasn't personal, it wasn't about her, she was able to see the bigger picture of what was going on for this guy, she actually found some empathy for him. Now again, back to my comment earlier, you don't have to put up with that kind of behavior. And, I encouraged her and empowered her to speak to him about it, which is how this all came about, where she was able to see the bigger picture. But it was started with her ability to broaden that view and recognize that he was experiencing life based on what was going on in his world, right? So she was able to have empathy for them. So think about that. Maybe there's somebody that you know who is just not a happy person. They're not friendly, they're mean, they're always trying to put other people down. What's really going on with that person? When you can pull back and no longer take it as a personal attack on you, and you start to observe it and you start to see, like, what's going on with this person? All of a sudden, you see a lot. You see a lot more than when you're just focused on you and how it's affecting you. And often, you will find you have empathy for that person because you go, wow, it's interesting. That person must really have gone through something in their life, or they must really feel badly enough about themselves that they feel a need to charge after me or put me down or be disrespectful to me. Like, wow, that's too bad that they feel that way in their life. And you start to have empathy for them. Again, doesn't mean you have to accept that poor behavior, but you recognize that it's not about you. And then that third thing, when you ask yourself what experiences or beliefs it is within you that are having you feel that it's about you, it also helps you see the bigger picture. It helps you recognize, like, I have to take ownership of my own actions. If I'm feeling like this is all about me and I'm really taking all of this person's negative behavior personally, what's going on for me? Why is this person triggering me? So for this woman that I mentioned to you earlier, what was happening with her is she had grown up with a father who had really kind of looked down upon women and their role in the workplace. He had indicated that she would be better served to be at home raising a family. And so her disempowerment or her feeling of being attacked was some of her own stuff coming up. And she was taking it personally when in fact this guy's behavior, as I mentioned a second ago, wasn't about her at all. So when she was able to recognize and start to work on healing her own history, her own beliefs, and her own experiences, she again felt so much more empowered, and it gave her the courage then to talk to this guy and to express how she felt and to make it clear that she didn't appreciate his behavior. And in doing that, that's when again she started to discover so much more about him and what was going on with him. So consequently, what happened is then her bringing that awareness to him and asking that he be more respectful. It brought to light what was happening, and he recognized it, and he actually apologized to her. He let her know it wasn't about her at all, and they were both able to coexist in this work environment on a much more respectful level. Now, I'm not saying that's always going to happen with everyone you encounter. Some people can't see what they're doing, and they are so wounded and so hurt in their own life, in their own situation, that they won't respond like you want them to. But that's okay, because remember, when you recognize that someone else's behavior isn't about you, and you no longer take it personally, you no longer are the victim of that person's behaviors. You no longer have to accept their judgments or their negativity, and you no longer have to let it affect you. You can go back to working on you, because that is what you have to take ownership of: your own actions, your own behaviors, and your own reactions to how people are behaving in the world. So I want to challenge you this week: really work on those things. Really work on when people are acting in a way that you don't, that you feel attacked by. Take a step back, recognize that that's their stuff to own. It's not about you. And what it is that is occurring for you that's causing you to feel that way, work on healing those things, work on being more empowered in your own behaviors, and watch how that changes things for you. I can tell you one thing: it creates a tremendous amount of freedom in your own life when you no longer take other people's actions or behaviors or beliefs personally. So I want to thank you for joining me, and until next week, this is Certified High Performance Coach Michelle Weimer. Again, goodbye for now.